Hey, welcome to Viking Preparedness. I'm Pastor Joe Fox. You know, as times get weirder, right? I mean, the country's falling apart, the world's going crazy, economic disaster, natural disaster, people shooting people in the street. I mean, we all see it, right? We all read the news. We're all switched on to one degree or another. It's why you watch preparedness channels like this one. And so, as we see things doing that, we start thinking to ourselves, or we should, what can I do to better prepare for what I see coming, right? I mean, we're all doing that. That's why you watch these things. It's like, hey, maybe I'll pick up a little tidbit and I'll be better prepared for me and my family or my group or whatever. And so we start assessing where we are preparedness-wise. And we all have really different ways of measuring that. We all have different metrics, if you will. And, so we'll go through and we'll say, well, do I have enough food? Do I have enough water? Do I have enough skill sets? Dun, 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 dun. And the more mature that we get in this preparedness process, the more we realize that we can't do it alone, right? We cannot survive alone. Now, yeah, there are eaches and ooches out there who can survive all by themselves, like one person. And in a lot of ways, it's easier if you have basic skill sets, or I would say probably advanced skill sets, to survive on your own, totally on your own, than with a group of people, maybe. Go be, some loner guy in the woods, maybe. But that's no kind of life. Yah, the Most High God, He created us as social creatures. It is not right that man should be alone, right? So then He created Eve, Chava, right? He created a helpmeet for Adam. And so right there, we started forming groups. And in a preparedness situation, depending on how you see it coming about, you're going to need people, right? And you start coming to that realization pretty soon. And so you start talking to people, and maybe you form a survival MAG, right? A mutual assistance group, or a survival team, or you organize the neighbors, or, you say, hey, if this happens, we could do this in our neighborhood. There's all kinds of things that one can do, all the way up to living in community, right? And I think in a lot of ways we desire, many of us, desire to be in a community of people like us, right? I want to be surrounded by me. I mean, if you want to be brutally honest. But you start looking at things and you're like, yeah, I'd like to be in a good survival group when things come down. Or perhaps it's from a more spiritual perspective, and you are tired of dealing with the madness that is out there in the world and the filth and the junk, and you just want to be surrounded by Christ followers, right? And people, or, whatever you worship, and you want to be around people who think and act and feel like you do. It's not just you. That's human nature. Humans have been forming communities forever, right? It's why you see enclaves of types of people. Example, Chinatown, right? Who lives in Chinatown? Chinese people. Why do they live all in one place? Well, there's a lot of reasons. I just watched a video on it last night. Wasn't about that, but it covered Chinatown in San Francisco. But one reason is people prefer being around people who understand them, who think like them, who eat like them, who just, it's more comfortable to be around your own kind. You see Jewish sectors in European countries. You see, communities built around a golf course. Right? People retire and they want to live around the golf course. Why? Because that's what they're into, and they're around people who think like they do. I've seen communities built around an airfield before, private pilots, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this is a preparedness channel, and it's, I try to cover physical and spiritual preparedness, and so we're going to do a series on community. I'm going to call it community, but you can think about it how you want. It could be something very small, like a team. It could be something very big, like a village. There's a lot of ways to do community. No one way is the right way. And contrary to what some people say, there really isn't a wrong way to do community, as long as those who are in the community agree with it, right? And so we're going to get into that, and we're going to cover a lot of ground, and so I'm going to break this up into a series of videos. And what I'd like to talk about today in this first video is really the first thing one has to consider when forming a MAG or a community or an intentional community or, you know, a team or anything like that. And so for the rest of these videos, I think I'm just going to say community. Y'all can make it however you want. But the thing you have to get to is, what is the purpose of your community? And really, you have to one should spend some time here. What is the purpose of this group of people coming together? Because you may think that the purpose is this, and then Bob and Sally, who join your group, may think the purpose is this. And then down the road, when those two don't coincide, you've got problems, right? Potential problems. We're messy as people. And Americans are probably messier than most, you know, because we have this fierce sense of independence and self-autonomy, right? We want to be our own man, our own woman. We want to do things our way. We forge this country, you know, dun, 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 dun. It's kind of how we think as Americans. Capitalism is a very American kind of thought process that much of the world does not share, right? But it's very American, and these things go against community. Another thing, survivalists, right? An old term, now people call them preppers. Preppers are kind of softer than the survivalists used to be, in my mind, you know, in my definition. But very independent people, for the most part, trying to figure out a way to forge a way ahead for them and their family alone, you know, because no one's going to be with us. We got to do it ourselves. And so when these people finally realize that, wow, I am going to have to sleep sometime, and, you know, I may have to sleep while my wife is sick, so bam, now who's pulling security, let alone planting carrots, pumping water, you know, whatever. I need more people. But we're very independent-minded, and probably cover this in another video in more detail, because you got to give something up to be part of a community, and what you get out of it is going to depend on what you put into it. We've heard that before, right? Team sports, things like that. There's no I in team. Yeah, but there's me. Okay. Hey, so purpose. You got to come up with a purpose. What's the reason you're forming this group? And you should spend some time here. The founders should spend time here. When I was in the military, they moved me around a whole lot for 20 years, and most places that I ended up settling, I would end up forming or joining an established survival group. They didn't call them MAGs back then, they called them teams mostly. And if there was a good one, I would join it. If there wasn't, I would form one. And I was just looking through some old papers and I found this, so I'm going to show you this. This was the purpose of one of the teams that I was on. Right here. I'll just let you look at that. Now, Pastor Joe didn't come up with this purpose. We worked on this together over many meetings, right? We got together, we got to know each other, we broke some bread, we hung out, we met each other at different campouts, and then we finally developed this purpose for our survival team, our MAG as you would call it today. And it was to organize, make preparations, conduct training. Why? To enable the provision of mutual assistance to fellow team members during times of emergency, to ensure the survival of the team members and their families. And so what was the purpose? The real purpose was to ensure the survival of the team members and their families. And the way we wanted to get to that was by forming this team. And in this team, we were going to organize, we were going to train, and we were going to do these things. And in fact, we did, right? So that was the purpose of that team. Now, there are slight variations between purpose and vision. Vision is the envisioned end state of where this thing is going. The perfect team, after we formed it, molded it, and gone forward, what is it going to look like? So, you know, the vision is the, not enablement, the embodiment, I'm missing the word right now, but it's the team, is the purpose fulfilled. That's the vision. Leaders have vision, right? Leaders have to develop vision. You have to see the end state from the beginning, and you have to guide all your efforts towards that end state, which is why it's so important that the founders of your team, of your community, all agree on your purpose, on your vision for the community so that they all stay on board when you're going down the line. I'll give you another example. I'm going to show you the Shofar Mountain vision. I've shown it to you before. Here we go. Let me see here. I'll just bring it over here so I can see it. Okay, so this is the Shofar Mountain vision. Let me pull that out a little bit. A united community pursuing a deep and obedient relationship with Yahweh, that's the Lord in the King James Version, and which has left worldly lust behind and is living a simple agrarian life that treats creation with respect. Forgive me on the grammar. We had a couple points we wanted to put into one vision statement for Shofar Mountain. This vision statement was not written in an afternoon. This vision statement was written over the course of about 8 months on the internet with several people who came together with the idea of forming Shofar Mountain. And we all agreed on this, and we all helped craft this, if you will, this vision statement. We went further and we defined every word in that vision statement so that there would be no misunderstanding of what we meant when we said things like, what does a united community mean, right? You know, well, to you that may mean one thing, to me that may mean another thing, but we took the time then to go through and identify exactly what to us united meant, right? I changed that a little bit. It used to say self-sufficient in quotations instead of agrarian, realizing that all our provisions come from God. We've changed that to agrarian. Same kind of thing with a slightly different emphasis. But the point was, everyone who started out with Shofar Mountain agreed to that purpose. And so that was our desired end state for the community. Based on that, everything else flows. See, you can't start deciding what kind of house you're going to live in. You can't start deciding how are we going to arrange our finances. You can't start deciding, you cannot start deciding how are we going to run the government of this community until you know what the purpose of the community is, until you know what your vision of the fulfilled community looks like. Right? Everything has to flow from the purpose. And so you got to spend some time developing the purpose. And so this is what I would encourage you in this video to start thinking about is why do you want to form community? I'll give you a couple reasons why I think you want to form community. I started, 2010 maybe, might have been 9, but I think it was closer to 10. I was a Christian pastor at the time in Kansas, and I got this from the Holy Spirit to start looking at community, Christian community. And so we formed a group called Christians in Community, right? And we would meet on Tuesdays at a different person's house every week, potluck, and then we would have guided discussion. And we knew this week what we were going to talk about next week, so people could do homework and prepare. And what we were basically looking at, the purpose of that group was to investigate should Christians live in community, and if so, what would that look like in the 21st century? Things along that line. And so, of course, we started in Acts, the Acts Model Church, holding all things in common, that kind of thing, and we'll get into that a little bit, probably in another video also. And then we went forward, and then we're like, yeah, living in community would be cool. Why? Because you're surrounded by other believers who can support one another and exhort one another and hold one another accountable and help one another. Just all the goodness of community. And so wouldn't that be neat? We go to a lot of feast celebrations. We have a lot here, and lots of people come, and people are like, wow, this is awesome. I would just love to form a community, or I would love to live on a community, or I'd like to be able to do this every day. Christian churches, you know how in a Christian church, hopefully you're part of it. I mean, what I'm getting ready to say. My brothers, don't go crazy. The hardcore group, you know how people go to church and they just warm a pew and leave, right? But they don't really desire to seek the deeper truths of the Word. Well, the hardcore group of people, you start hanging out together and you're like, man, you have those big conversations about Christ and Yeshua, and you're like, man, I would like to continue this. I would like it that I wouldn't have to drive an hour to go home now that we've spent all day together, that kind of thing. And so people start desiring to live in community. And so that comes about all the time. What people just think, yeah, it would be nice. They don't think about all the whys, ifs, hows, and whens. They just have the fantasy reality. The first thing you need to work on is purpose. What is the purpose of your community? Once you have that, you can start working on everything else. Get together, and it's going to change a little bit before you form the community. That's the thing too. You'll come to the table and you'll have this idea. Bob will come to the table with this idea. Sally will come to the table with this idea, and you craft it all together. But at the end of the day, it's going to take leadership to form community. As much as we would like to do everything by committee, committees don't get a lot of things done. It usually takes a leader. Now, if you have a group of people like a Special Forces A team that can just, they're all type A personalities, they can be loosely harnessed and then pointed in a direction and wonderful things happen, awesome, right? You win. But most people are not like that. And so someone will rise to the fore as the leader, but you need to take input from everybody in the vision. Everybody has to buy into it. Everybody has to buy into the purpose for this community, or like I said, you're going to have problems down the road. So spend some time. Why do you want a community? What's the purpose? Come up with a vision. What does the end state look like of this perfectly formed community? Put that down on paper, wordsmith it, then talk about what every word means. Make sure everybody understands what it means to be, in our case, obedient to Yah. What does that mean? Because it could mean one thing to one person and one thing to another person. It doesn't matter what it means to me. It matters what it means to you and your group. Start putting some pen to paper. Start thinking about it. Start talking with other people. What would you like to see in a group? All right. Maybe I'll see you out there.